Every night, the maid devoted herself to caring for the disabled billionaire, until one Christmas morning changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Please drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to the main character. Every night, at exactly 9:30, she walked down the same quiet hallway. The mansion was always warm, perfectly lit, and beautifully decorated, yet it never felt alive. Especially in December. Garlands framed the doorways. A Christmas tree stood tall near the windows, wrapped in soft golden lights. Wrapped gifts rested neatly beneath it, untouched. The fireplace glowed, but no one ever sat close enough to feel its warmth. She paused before the last door at the end of the hall, adjusted the folded towels in her arms, and took a slow breath. She did this every night, not because anyone reminded her to, but because routine was the only thing that made this place feel human. Inside the room, the air was calm and still. He sat by the window in his wheelchair, facing the darkness outside. Snow fell gently over the empty grounds, covering everything in white. From a distance, it looked peaceful. From inside, it felt unbearably quiet. He did not turn when she entered. He never did. She moved softly, closing the door behind her, careful not to let it click too loudly. Her steps were light, practiced, respectful. She had learned early on that sudden sounds made him tense, even if he pretended not to notice. She placed the towels on the chair beside him and knelt to adjust the blanket over his legs. Her movements were slow and deliberate, never rushed, never careless. "You can tell me if it is too warm," she said gently. There was no response. She checked the room temperature, the humidifier, the small lamp by the bed. Everything exactly the way he preferred, though he had never said the words out loud. She had learned by paying attention. Most people saw him as a billionaire who had lost everything that mattered. A powerful man reduced to silence and stillness after the accident. The doctors called it paralysis. The newspapers called it tragedy. She never called it anything. To her, he was simply a man who had stopped believing that tomorrow could be different from today. She warmed a cloth with water, tested it against her wrist, then began her work. She wiped his hands first, careful around his fingers, which always felt cold no matter how high the heat was set. Then his arms. Then his shoulders. "I heard the snow might reach 12 inches tonight," she said quietly. "They are saying it might be the coldest Christmas in 10 years. His eyes remained fixed on the window. She did not stop talking. She told him about the grocery store down the street that had already sold out of fresh pies. She mentioned the radio station that had been playing the same Christmas song every hour since Thanksgiving. She even laughed softly at herself, as if embarrassed to fill the silence with such ordinary things. But she knew something most people did not. Silence was heavier than words. She finished carefully, replaced the blanket, and tucked it in around his legs. Then she stood beside him for a moment, unsure if she should leave or stay a little longer. Finally, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. "Just one song," she said, almost apologetically. Soft music filled the room. An old Christmas melody, slow and familiar. The kind people listened to when they wanted to remember something they were afraid to lose. She watched him as the music played. For a brief moment, she thought she imagined it. But then she saw it again. The smallest change in his breathing. A subtle shift, like his chest rose just a little deeper than before. Her heart skipped, but she did not react. She had learned patience the hard way. Instead, she continued standing there, towels still folded in her arms, music playing quietly, snow falling outside the window. Every night, she came back. Every night, she cared for him the same way. And on this night, just days before Christmas, something unseen had already begun to change. Morning always arrived quietly in the mansion. The sunlight filtered through tall windows, pale and cold, reflecting off the snow-covered grounds. The Christmas decorations looked brighter during the day, almost cheerful, but the silence remained unchanged. She arrived just before 8, her coat still dusted with snow, her breath visible in the air as she stepped inside. The housekeeper nodded at her in passing, already busy with her routine. No one ever stopped to ask how long she planned to stay. Most people did not last more than a few weeks in this job. She did. She found him in the same place by the window, his posture unchanged from the night before. The music had stopped, the room quiet again, as if nothing unusual had happened. "Good morning," she said softly, even though she knew he would not answer. She moved closer and adjusted the blanket around his shoulders. In the daylight, the faint lines of exhaustion on his face were easier to see. He looked younger than the newspapers made him seem. Less like a billionaire. More like a man who had been tired for a very long time. She prepared his breakfast tray, carefully arranging everything the way the nurse had taught her. Oatmeal, warm tea, medication placed in precise order. She waited, watching his face for any sign of reaction. Nothing. Still, she spoke. "I might be late tonight," she said. "The buses are running slow because of the storm." She hesitated, then added, "I will still come. Just not at 9:30. She did not know why she felt the need to explain herself. He had never once complained. He had never once asked her to stay. She helped him with the exercises the physical therapist had insisted on, lifting his arms gently, guiding his movements, counting under her breath. When his muscles resisted, she did not force them. "I know it hurts," she whispered. "We can stop if you want." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She noticed. That was when she realized something important. He was listening. Maybe not to every word, but enough to know when she offered him a choice. After finishing, she cleaned the room and stepped back, unsure what to do next. Usually, this was when she left. But something about the way he stared at the snow made her pause. "Christmas is in 4 days," she said lightly. "Do you like the decorations?" She smiled to herself. That was a silly question. "I guess you would not decorate like this if you hated it." She reached for the small table beside him and picked up a framed photograph. A younger version of him stood beside a woman, both smiling, dressed formally, surrounded by flashing cameras. She placed it back gently. "I am sorry," she said. "I should not touch your things." For the first time, his eyes shifted. It was subtle, almost easy to miss. But they moved, slowly, away from the window and toward her. She froze. "I did not mean to upset you," she said quickly. "I can put it back exactly where it was." His gaze lingered on her face. Her heart began to race, but she forced herself to remain calm. She had learned not to react too quickly. She had learned that pressure only pushed him further inward. She lowered her voice. "It is all right. I am here." The words slipped out before she could stop them. "I am here." Something about that seemed to reach him. His fingers twitched slightly against the armrest. Just once. Just enough. She swallowed hard, afraid to breathe too loudly. "You did that yesterday too," she said carefully. During the music. He did not look away. She felt something shift inside her chest. Not excitement. Not hope. Something quieter. Something steadier. Understanding. From that moment on, she treated him differently. Not as someone broken. Not as someone waiting to be fixed. But as someone who was still present, still choosing, even if the choices were small. When she left later that afternoon, she paused at the door. "I will see you tonight," she said. "Even if I am late." She waited. He did not nod. He did not speak. But his eyes followed her as she walked away. And for the first time since she had started this job, she felt certain of one thing. He was not as unreachable as everyone believed. That night, she arrived later than usual. The storm had worsened, just as the weather forecast promised. Snow piled along the roads, and traffic crawled at a frustrating pace. By the time she reached the mansion, her fingers were stiff from the cold, and her shoulders ached from the long ride. The clock on the hallway wall read 10:15. She paused outside his door, guilt pressing softly at her chest. She had told him she would be late, but still, she worried. Not because he depended on her physically. There were others who could help with that. She worried because routine mattered to him more than anyone realized. She knocked once, quietly, then stepped inside. The lights were dimmer than usual. Only the lamp by the window was on, casting a warm glow across the room. He sat in the same place, but something was different. His head was not turned fully toward the window. It was angled slightly toward the door. "I am sorry I am late," she said immediately. "The roads were terrible. I should have left earlier." She waited. No response. But his eyes shifted again, just a little, following her as she crossed the room. She smiled without meaning to. "That makes 2 nights in a row," she said softly. "You are getting predictable." She set the towels down and removed her coat, hanging it carefully on the back of the chair. Snow melted onto the floor beneath it, leaving a small puddle that she wiped away with her foot. She knelt in front of him, the same way she always did, and began her routine. Hands first. Arms. Shoulders. Her movements were slower tonight, more deliberate. She paid closer attention to every small reaction. The tightening of his jaw. The shallow breaths. The way his fingers seemed to curl slightly when the cloth touched his skin. "You do not have to pretend it does not hurt," she murmured. "I can see it." She did not know if he understood her words, but she knew he understood her tone. When she finished, she reached for the speaker on the table. "Do you want music tonight?" she asked. She waited, counting silently. 1 second. 2. Then, unmistakably, his fingers twitched again. She froze. "That is a yes," she said gently, as if afraid to break something fragile. She played the same song from the night before. The old Christmas melody filled the room once more, soft and steady. She stood beside him this time, not behind him, watching his face as the music played. His breathing slowed. His shoulders relaxed, just enough to notice. "You know," she said after a moment, "when I was a kid, my mother used to play this song every year while she cooked. She said it made the house feel warmer." She glanced around the room. I think she was right. She did not expect him to respond. But when the song ended, something happened. His lips parted slightly. She leaned closer, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain he could hear it. "I am here," she whispered. "You can take your time." The sound that followed was barely a sound at all, more like a breath shaped into a word. "Stay." She inhaled sharply. "Yes," she said immediately. "Of course." She pulled a chair closer and sat beside him, still keeping a respectful distance. She did not touch him. She did not rush. She simply stayed. Minutes passed. Then more. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Inside, something quiet and profound settled into the space between them. He tried to speak again, but the effort exhausted him. His head slumped slightly, and his eyes closed. She stood quickly, worried she had pushed him too far, but his breathing remained steady. Peaceful. She covered him with the blanket and adjusted the pillow behind his head. "You did great," she whispered. "Really great." Before leaving, she hesitated at the door. "I will be here tomorrow," she said. "And the next night. And Christmas Eve too." She smiled to herself. "You are not doing this alone." When she finally turned off the light and stepped into the hallway, her hands were trembling. Not from the cold, but from the certainty that something real had begun. By the next morning, the snow had stopped. The world outside the mansion looked clean and untouched, as if everything had been given a second chance overnight. Inside, the house was already awake. Voices echoed faintly from downstairs. Staff members moved with quiet efficiency, preparing for the days leading up to Christmas. She arrived early. When she entered his room, she noticed the first change immediately. He was not by the window. He sat closer to the bed now, angled slightly toward the center of the room, as if he had chosen a different view. It was a small thing. Anyone else might have missed it, but she did not. "Good morning," she said, her voice warm. "You look different today." She set down her bag and walked closer. His eyes met hers briefly, then shifted away, not with discomfort, with effort. She smiled. The nurse arrived shortly after, clipboard in hand, already halfway through her routine assessment. She checked his vitals, adjusted his chair, asked the usual questions. "How is he at night?" the nurse asked, glancing at her. She hesitated. "He is more responsive," she said carefully. "He spoke last night." The nurse paused, then gave a polite nod. "That happens sometimes," she replied. "It does not always mean progress." She wanted to argue. She wanted to explain how different it felt, how deliberate his words had been. But she stayed quiet. Not everything needed to be proven right away. After the nurse left, she helped him through his exercises. This time, when she lifted his arm, he did not resist. His muscles trembled, strained, but they followed her lead. "That is good," she encouraged softly. "You are doing exactly what you need to do." His breathing grew heavier, sweat forming along his brow. She wiped it gently with a cloth, the same way she had every night. "You can rest," she said. "We can stop." He shook his head. Barely, but it was unmistakable. She swallowed the tightness in her throat. "All right," she said. "One more." They worked in silence after that, the room filled only with the sound of effort and controlled breathing. When they finished, he looked exhausted, but something else lingered in his expression. Relief. Later that afternoon, she returned with lunch. She placed the tray in front of him and sat nearby, pretending to organize papers so she could watch him without staring. He looked at the spoon, then at her. She waited. Slowly, with visible concentration, he lifted his hand. The movement was uneven and weak, but it was his. The spoon shook as he brought it closer to the bowl. She leaned forward instinctively, ready to help, then stopped herself. "You can do it," she said quietly. The spoon dipped into the oatmeal. Some of it spilled. He frowned. "That is okay," she said quickly. "Nobody eats perfectly." He tried again. This time, the spoon made it to his mouth. Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. "I am proud of you," she said. "I hope you know that." His lips curved, just slightly. Not quite a smile, but close enough. That evening, she brought the music again. Not the Christmas song this time. Something slower. Softer. "I thought you might like this one," she said. "It helps me sleep." She sat on the floor beside his chair, close enough to be present, far enough to give him space. As the music played, she noticed something else. His foot moved. Just a fraction. Not a reflex. A response. Her breath caught. She did not say anything. She did not call anyone. She did not want to turn the moment into something clinical. Instead, she spoke to him the way she always did. "You know," she said, "people think healing is loud. They think it looks like miracles. But I think it is quieter than that." She glanced up at him. "I think it looks like this." The song ended. The room fell silent again. His voice came out rough, strained, but clear enough to understand. "You stayed." She smiled, her chest aching. "Yes," she said. "I stayed." And in that moment, she realized something she had not allowed herself to think before. She was not just helping him heal. She was becoming part of the reason he wanted to. The days leading up to Christmas passed differently after that. Not faster, not slower, just fuller. She noticed the changes before anyone else did. The way his eyes followed her when she entered the room. The way his shoulders relaxed when she spoke. The way his breathing steadied when she reminded him to rest. They spoke more now. Not long conversations. Short ones. Careful ones. "Did it snow again?" he asked one morning, his voice still rough but stronger than before. "Yes," she replied. "Just a little. The trees look like they are holding their breath." He considered that. "I used to hate snow," he said. "Everything stopped when it came." She smiled softly. "Sometimes stopping is not the worst thing." He looked at her then, really looked at her, as if trying to understand how someone so ordinary could sound so certain. She continued her routines, but they felt different now. Less like tasks, more like shared moments. When she helped him through his exercises, he listened closely to her encouragement. When he grew frustrated, she reminded him to breathe. "You are not behind," she told him one afternoon. "You are exactly where you are supposed to be." He nodded slowly, absorbing her words. One evening, as she prepared to leave, he stopped her. "Why do you stay?" he asked quietly. She froze, her hand resting on the doorframe. She had asked herself that question many times. In the long bus rides. In the silence of her small apartment. In the moments when exhaustion pressed against her chest. She turned back to him. "Because you deserve someone who does not give up on you," she said honestly. "And because I know what it feels like when people do." He did not respond right away. His gaze drifted toward the Christmas tree in the corner of the room. The lights reflected softly in his eyes. "I used to think people stayed because of who I was," he said finally. "My name, my money, what I could offer." She waited. "Now I am not sure who I am anymore," he continued. "And you are still here." Her voice trembled slightly. "You are still you." That night, she stayed longer than usual. They listened to music. Not Christmas songs this time. Something instrumental. Quiet. She told him about her childhood. About helping her mother after school. About the nursing program she had to leave behind when money ran out. "I wanted to help people heal," she said. "Funny how life works." He watched her closely. "You are doing that," he said. The words caught her off guard. She looked away, blinking back emotion she was not ready to name. As Christmas Eve approached, the house filled with more activity. Deliveries arrived. Decorations were adjusted. Family members she had never seen before came and went, speaking in polite tones that did not quite reach their eyes. He noticed the tension too. "They are not here for me," he said quietly one evening. "They are here to see if I am still broken." She felt anger rise in her chest, sharp and protective. "You are not broken," she said firmly. He smiled faintly. "You always say that." "Because it is true." That night, as she tucked the blanket around him, her hand brushed his. He did not pull away. Neither did she. For a moment, they stayed like that. Two people in a quiet room, the world outside distant and unimportant. Neither of them said the word love. They did not need to. Something deeper had already taken root. Christmas Eve arrived with a tension that could not be wrapped in lights or softened by music. The mansion was full for the first time since she had started working there. Cars lined the driveway. Voices echoed through the halls. Laughter appeared in short bursts, polite and carefully measured. She stayed close to his room, helping him dress for the evening. Hey, simple sweater, clean slacks, nothing extravagant. You do not have to go downstairs if you do not want to, she said quietly as she adjusted the collar. I know, he replied, but I should. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly. She noticed. She always did. When she finished, she rested her hands on the back of his chair for a moment, grounding both of them. I will be nearby, she said. If you need me. He looked up at her. I know. Downstairs, the atmosphere was thick with forced cheer. Relatives gathered near the fireplace, glasses raised, eyes watching him more than celebrating. Conversations paused when he entered the room. She stood off to the side, unnoticed by most, just the way she preferred it. From there, she watched everything. She saw the way his cousin leaned in too close. The way a business partner asked questions that felt less like concern and more like inspection. The way people smiled without warmth. Then she heard it. Two men speaking in low voices near the hallway. The recovery is not supposed to happen this fast, one said. That is why I told you to slow things down, the other replied. If he regains control, everything changes. Her heart began to pound. Relax, the first voice continued. The doctors already said it could plateau again. Accidents like that do not just reverse. Accidents. She felt cold spread through her chest. She did not wait to hear more. She moved quickly but quietly, back toward his room, her thoughts racing. When she entered, he looked at her immediately. What is wrong? He asked. She hesitated. Every instinct told her to protect him from what she had heard. But she knew something else too. Healing meant truth. There are people here who do not want you to get better, she said carefully. His expression hardened. I suspected as much, he said. She swallowed. They talked about the accident. Like it was not random. Silence filled the room. He closed his eyes slowly, as if the weight of the words settled somewhere deep inside him. I knew, he said quietly. I just did not want to know. She stepped closer. You are not imagining this. And you are not alone. He looked at her, something raw and vulnerable in his gaze. They wanted me to stay like this, he said. Quiet. Dependent. And now, she asked. Now they are afraid. Footsteps sounded outside the door. Voices drew closer. She instinctively placed herself between him and the entrance. You should rest, she said softly. Let me handle this part. He reached out, his hand brushing her wrist. Do not put yourself at risk for me, he said. She met his eyes. I am already here. A knock came at the door. She straightened and opened it to find his cousin standing there, smile too sharp to be kind. We were wondering where you disappeared to, he said, glancing past her into the room. He is tired, she replied evenly. Tonight has been a lot for him. The cousin studied her for a moment, clearly annoyed. Make sure he does not overdo it, he said. We would not want any setbacks. After he left, she closed the door slowly, her hands shaking. She turned back to him. They are scared, she said. That means you are getting stronger. He looked at her, something fierce and determined awakening behind his tired eyes. Then I am not stopping, he said. Not now? Not ever. Outside, Christmas music drifted faintly through the halls. Inside the room, something had shifted. This was no longer just about healing. It was about survival. The days after Christmas Eve felt heavier, as if the air itself had thickened with unspoken truths. The guests left one by one, their smiles polite, their concern carefully staged. When the mansion finally grew quiet again, it did not return to its old stillness. Something underneath had awakened, restless and alert. He asked to begin physical therapy the very next morning. Not gently, not gradually, fully. The therapist hesitated when she heard his request. We need to be careful, she warned. Pushing too fast can cause damage. He looked at her, then at the woman standing quietly near the wall. I am not fragile, he said. I have just been treated that way. She met his eyes and nodded. We will take it one step at a time, she said. But we will move forward. And they did. The sessions were brutal. His muscles screamed in protest. His balance betrayed him again and again. More than once, he nearly fell. Each time, she was there, not catching him, not rescuing him, but reminding him to breathe, to steady himself, to try again. You are not failing, she said one afternoon when frustration overtook him. You are learning your body again. He clenched his jaw, sweat dripping down his temples. I hate needing help. She crouched in front of him, her voice calm but firm. Needing help does not make you weak. Refusing it does. He exhaled slowly. That same day, she did something she had been afraid to do. She contacted the private nurse who had overseen his care immediately after the accident. The woman hesitated at first, then spoke in hushed tones. There were inconsistencies, the nurse admitted. Medication changes I did not authorize. Orders that did not come from the doctor. Who signed them, she asked. There was a long pause. Your cousin, the nurse finally said. Under the authority of the family trust. That night, she told him everything. He listened in silence, his expression unreadable. So it was not just neglect, he said quietly. It was control. Yes, she replied. And it did not work. He looked down at his hands, now stronger, steadier than before. Hands that had once felt useless. I want proof, he said. Not revenge. Truth. They worked together carefully after that. He authorized a review of his medical records. She documented everything she had witnessed. The therapist supported them. A lawyer was contacted quietly, discreetly. The walls that once trapped him began to close in around those who had tried to keep him powerless. One afternoon, during therapy, he stood without assistance for the first time. Only for a few seconds. Only barely. But he stood. She held her breath, afraid to speak, afraid to distract him. I am still here, she said finally. He nodded, his legs trembling. I know. When he sat back down, exhausted but smiling, something changed between them. Not desire. Not romance. Trust. That evening, as she prepared to leave, he stopped her. If this becomes complicated, he said carefully, I do not want you hurt because of me. She met his gaze. I am not here because of your name, she said, or your money. I am here because you chose to fight. He absorbed her words slowly. Then stay, he said, not as my caregiver, as my ally. She hesitated only a moment. Then she nodded. All right. Outside, the snow had begun to melt. Paths that were once buried started to show again. Inside the mansion, something far more important had already cleared. The truth was coming, and neither of them intended to step back. The truth did not arrive all at once. It came in pieces. Documents. Signatures. Dates that did not line up. Medical orders quietly altered. Payments routed through accounts that were supposed to protect him. Each discovery tightened the air around them. He insisted on reviewing everything himself. Sitting at his desk, shoulders tense, legs still weak, but steady enough to hold him upright. He read through pages of his own life as if it belonged to someone else. She stayed beside him, not speaking unless he asked, not shielding him from the details, not softening the edges. Healing, she had learned, did not mean hiding pain. It meant facing it without turning away. When the lawyer confirmed it, there was no shock left in his eyes. Only resolve. They wanted me quiet, he said. Dependent. Convenient. And they failed, she replied. The confrontation happened 2 days later. His cousin arrived unannounced, confidence still clinging to him like armor. He expected weakness. He expected compliance. Instead, he found a man standing. Not perfectly, not without effort, but unmistakably upright. The room went still. You should have stayed out of this, the cousin said, glancing briefly at her, dismissive. This was family business. He did not raise his voice when he answered. You stopped being family when you decided my life was negotiable. The evidence was laid out carefully, calmly, methodically. There was no shouting, no dramatic accusations, just facts that could not be undone. By the time security escorted the cousin out, the mansion felt different, lighter, as if a long-held breath had finally been released. Afterward, he sat down heavily, exhaustion catching up to him. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the effort it had taken to hold his ground. She knelt in front of him without thinking and took his hands in hers. You did it, she said. We did, he corrected. In the weeks that followed, the changes were unmistakable. He committed fully to therapy. Every day? No excuses. No shortcuts. His strength returned slowly, honestly. Painful progress that belonged to him alone. She enrolled again in her nursing courses, the one she had put aside years ago. He never framed it as charity. He called it investment. Not in you, he said once. In what you already are. They ate together now, sometimes in silence, sometimes talking about small, ordinary things. He learned how she liked her coffee. She learned which exercises frustrated him the most. The mansion no longer felt like a place of waiting. It felt lived in. One afternoon, she found him standing by the window again. This time, without the chair. I used to think strength was control, he said quietly. Now I think it is choice. She smiled. That sounds like progress. He turned toward her, eyes steady, open in a way they had not been before. You gave me back something I thought was gone forever, he said. Not my body, my will. She shook her head gently. You chose to fight. Yes, he said, but you stayed long enough for me to remember how. The Christmas decorations were still up. The lights softer now, less performative, more real. That evening, he handed her a small box. Inside was not a ring. Not yet. It was the old playlist she had played that first night. Printed. Preserved. Real. I want to remember where this started, he said. She closed the box carefully, her eyes shining. So do I. The storm had passed. The truth had surfaced. And for the first time, neither of them felt like they were standing alone. Spring arrived quietly. Not with celebration. Not with announcements. Just warmth. The snow melted from the grounds around the mansion, revealing paths that had been hidden for months. The windows stayed open longer now. Sunlight reached places it never had before. He walked on his own most days. Slowly. Carefully. But without the chair. She watched him from the doorway one morning as he crossed the room, steady but focused, every step intentional. When he reached the window, he stopped and looked back at her. You are staring, he said, amused. I am appreciating, she replied. They both smiled. Life did not suddenly become perfect. His body still ached. Some days were harder than others. Some nights brought exhaustion instead of peace. But he no longer faced them alone. She finished her nursing program in early summer. He sat in the front row during her small ceremony, clapping harder than anyone else. When she found him afterward, he handed her a simple bouquet and said nothing at first. Then, quietly, I knew you would. They moved out of the mansion not long after. Not far. Just somewhere smaller. Somewhere that did not echo. The old room with the window became an office. The wheelchair was folded and placed gently in storage. Not forgotten. Just no longer needed every day. On a warm evening, nearly 1 year after that first Christmas, they returned to the grounds one last time. The trees were full now. The air smelled like fresh grass and early flowers. She stood beside him as he looked out across the place that had once felt like a prison. This is where everything stopped, he said. And where it started again, she replied. He turned toward her then. There was no crowd, no music, no speech prepared in advance. Just honesty. I was not saved by medicine alone, he said. Or determination. Or time. I was saved by someone who stayed when it would have been easier to leave. Her breath caught. I do not want to build a future out of gratitude, he continued. I want to build it out of choice. Every day. He reached into his pocket and held out a small ring. Simple. Unassuming. Real. Will you choose me? He asked. Not as someone to heal, but as someone to live with. Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled through them. Yes, she said. I already have. They did not rush the wedding. They did not make headlines. They married quietly, surrounded by people who knew their story not through wealth, but through time. On the night of their first anniversary, she played the same song she had played that first evening. The old Christmas melody. Soft. Familiar. He pulled her close, steady on his feet, strong in a way that had nothing to do with muscle. You stayed, he whispered. So did you, she replied. Sometimes love does not arrive loudly. It does not rescue or conquer. Sometimes, love arrives every night. With patience. With care. With quiet faith. And it stays.